Hello, I'm Aisha Aldris, and you are listening to BBC Radio Norfolk's Friday Night Show. I'm here to talk to artists who have meaningfully experienced more than one culture about how their cultural influences have shaped their work. Today, we are celebrating the blessing of cross-culturalism and its beauty with Lena Ibrahim, who is a portrait painter and studies medicine at the UEA. And following the theme of today's show, we will also be talking about identity. So, hello Lena, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on here.
Of course, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so let's jump in. So, would you like to start by telling us all about the cultures that have meaningfully impacted you in your life?
Yeah, sure. So, being born in Norwich to Iraqi parents, I've had that exposure to a dual culture in my life. And I take pride in experiencing both cultures. I think life's much more interesting that way because you get to play your British self at work with your friends and at university. And then suddenly when you get home, it's almost like an escapism. It's a different language, a different cuisine, different culture. And so I like to take both of them and get inspired by both. I think it's so important too. And it's such a privilege too as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant. And there are a few points there that you mentioned that I want to get into a little bit more later. But first, I want everyone to be introduced into your work as an artist. So, how did that passion begin and how did it evolve for you?
So, I've always been very creative during my childhood. I think I was more artistic than I was academic, contrary to what I'm doing at the moment, which is very academic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that creativity does complement medicine a lot. So I've always been very interested in all walks of creativity, whether it be, fashion design or interior design or cosmetics and stuff. And then it became painting and sculpting and drawing. And I think at the age of 14, I actually moved to a school where they had different art supplies. I suddenly realized what oil paints were because I actually never came across them before that. I started to experiment with it. And I saw my work just soaring, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept on going. I had a really keen interest in people's faces and the form of people's faces and, skin tones and shapes of noses. And it was just really mesmerizing to me. And so it was something that I persisted with. I found my niche. Portraiture was sort of my genre that I wanted to pursue.
How would you say that those cultural influences that you have shaped your outlook and therefore your work?
I think depicting yourself as both an Arab and a British citizen in your work allows you to be more comfortable with being yourself. And I think that was something that I struggled with. And I think a lot of people struggle with when they're younger.
Yeah.
Especially, how do you explain to people who you are, really? What you're going through or how you're experiencing life. Like you said, like you go home and you have a different sort of culture and you go to school or you go to work and it's completely different. Obviously, when you're younger, people don't actually understand what it means to be Arab. So it was really difficult for people to actually accept you, first of all, and also to integrate with them and, have very friendly interactions with people because, they became very judgmental at the time. And I think at the time as well, being in Norwich, it wasn't very diverse at the time. So it was incredibly difficult. And I think my artwork really, it's a bit of a narrative of who I was. It's given me more confidence in terms of being unapologetically who you are. If you want to accept me, you can. And if you don't, then that's your problem, really.
Mm-hmm. I think it's something that so many people aren't fully aware of, the whole phenomena of cross-culturalism and what third culture kids are. So a third culture kid is an individual who spent a significant part of their developmental years outside of their parents' country of nationality or outside of their own country of nationality. So a lot of people, they don't often see how conflicting navigating life between completely polar opposite cultural identities can be. And for some people, it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or however many different cultures they've interacted with throughout their lives. Growing up, it can be really difficult to kind of understand your own identity when the environment inside your home is just so different to the environment outside of your home.
Absolutely. And you have expectations both at home and you have expectations within, between your peers of who you should be. So then obviously that's a big pressure on you, because you have to fit the status quo, I suppose, and really try to balance the two, which is also really, really hard. It's obviously a lot easier when you grow up, because the environment helps you to do that. They're accepting, but obviously at a younger age it becomes such a big thing to juggle, and I think that also really impacts the person that you grow up to be. If you spend too much time outside your family, you then don't really know much about your own culture, you don't know much about your own language down the line. Conversely, if you were to be at home too much, then it becomes harder to integrate into society. So that's definitely a big thing that I think young people have suffered with their identity, or at least found difficulty with.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It is such a different life experience. Throughout that process of finding yourself and your identity, do you think that as you grew up in your experience, it was something that you embraced more?
Yes, definitely. I think at high school, it was a difficult process to accept. But I was definitely very close to my Iraqi culture, because it was definitely more welcoming than the British side. But that's just surely because of, I think, the immaturity of your peers and the closed-mindedness. I think that was sort of in the environment. When you grow up, obviously, that sort of tends to subside. You start to meet people at university that have different backgrounds, and so it becomes more normalized. You're no longer alienated for who you are and how you're different. I think that I've connected with my culture more in terms of, I found it again. I've started to learn what it means to be Iraqi the second time, and it makes far more sense than it did the first time, because it was just in the background. I was just living with it. But then obviously when you grow up, you become more curious, you want to learn more about your culture yourself, from reading the textbooks, or social media obviously has such a great abundance of information, of sharing photos and things like that, and your history. So I've learnt what it means to be Iraqi the second time, and I think you fall in love with your culture the second time. You start to realize where you really come from, and you're infatuated with your own culture, and you're just in love with the people, the language, just the simple daily things that Iraqis do, because it's so endearing. And I know that for example, when I see something that goes horrifically wrong in Iraq, which is unfortunately far too often, it feels so raw. It feels so real. You almost feel it inside of you. And I'm thinking, how can something so far away from me feel so raw?
It's because it's a part of you. Like, ultimately, it's a part of you. And I think, as you're saying, like, when you say you fall in love with it when you grow older, I completely relate. And I think so many others do too. And I think it's because finally, when you break that high school mold of I want to fit in and I want to be like everyone else, I think when you go into adulthood, you realize the world isn't high school, and the world is so much bigger than me and the lives we lead. And there are so many different cultures, and there are so many things to be explored, and there are so many things to be explored within me that I haven't explored yet, because I was too afraid of looking different, or I was too afraid of not fitting in, and I just wanted to be accepted. And I think that creates like a fire within people that makes them think, no, wait a second, like I'd been doing this all wrong. I want to look into this history. I want to look into myself, because there's so much power that comes from being at one with who you are and celebrating it. It's like a waterfall then. Like as soon as the gates open, you just want to learn more and more, and you
Absolutely.
connect to it even more. And it's such a beautiful thing.
I honestly couldn't agree more. And I think you really just hit it spot on, because it's such an immature world that we live in high school, and you don't really realize that it's going to end very soon, and suddenly adulthood's going to start. And it's so liberating, finding yourself and reconnecting with your roots in a mature way, and just falling in love with it.
Finally, before I ask where everyone can find you, what mark and legacy do you hope to leave with your artwork?
I think it's so important to sort of keep that connection with your roots, and sort of do your research in terms of reading more about your country's history, and yeah, just not abandoning it. I think that's so important, and that's something that I hope to sort of develop with my artwork further, which is to sort of portray what it means to be British and Arab at the same time.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm so happy to have had you be a part of this. Where can everyone find you?
So I have an Instagram account, Lena Ibrahim Art. I post my artwork there when I'm not studying or working on the wards. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be on there, and also I have a website as well, which you can also find on there, lenaibrahim.com.
So that is LENAIBRAHIM art. Guys, head over to Lena's page and website and show her some love. So thank you so much for being a part of this. It's been great to have you on, and take care. I can't wait to see all the great things to come, both from your art and your medicine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and it's been such a great experience talking about this important topic. And it's been really great chatting to you tonight.
You too. All right, that's all for tonight then, guys. Bye.